All right. So today we are going to start on this aggregate planning and sales and operations planning. Okay, sales and operations planning. So it is about, if you can recall, operations planning, operations management is about making sure whatever we're going to produce, okay, we'll be able to manage it properly. We have enough facilities, we have enough capacity, and so on. So, and it depends on demand. So this is about intermediate planning. It's not about scheduling every day. It's not about daily scheduling. It's about intermediate, intermediate planning of our production. How much we're going to produce based on our demand. Remember when we discussed about forecasting, chapter 3, chapter 4, we know that in operations management, we need to have forecasting numbers, forecast demand so that we can plan. For example, for throughout the year, we have certain number of demand. How are you going to break it down into monthly numbers? So that's why it's called aggregate. Aggregate means overall, okay, overall. So this it gives the example of Frito-Lay, which is actually a food manufacturer in US. Okay, so I will go through that after this. So some of the things that we're going to cover is the planning process, okay, long term, intermediate term, and short term. Okay, and it relates to sales and operations planning. There is related activities in sales and operations planning. When we look at what is aggregate planning, because I think you need to understand the concept of aggregate planning first. Okay, what do we mean by the aggregate planning? And from there, only we talk about strategies, aggregate planning strategies, how to make sure that we have enough capacity. If we do not have enough capacity, what should we do? What should we, what are the things that we can probably, use? So there are methods for aggregate planning. I'm going to focus on the little bit of calculation, okay, because we need to do a little bit of calculation to see which is the best plan according to our strategies. And just a little bit on aggregate planning in services, which is actually much more difficult than aggregate planning in product. Product is very easy because it's unitized. You can unitize the product. You can make cars. You can, in 1 year, you make 100,000 cars. Then how are we going to break down into monthly volume, okay? And finally, there is the concept of revenue management or yield management in services, perishable service products. For example, in hotels, in airline, you cannot store the, the inventory. You can inventorize the services. It is at the end of the day that the hotel room is not utilized, then it is lost income to the organization actually. So we'll look at this sales and operations planning process, and after that we define what aggregate planning is, and we want to actually identify aggregate planning strategies. What are the optional strategies that we can use to develop our aggregate plan? So at the end of the day, we want to have a plan. Plan means how much to produce on an aggregate basis, on a total basis. Okay, so I'm going to show you the graphical aggregate plan method, how to prepare that. And this transportation method, I'm not going to go to that detail, okay? So just some ideas for you to know that you can also use linear programming to solve it. It's very mathematical. And also, like I mentioned just now, understand and solve a revenue management problem. Okay, Frito-Lay is a food manufacturing company. If you have taken, food like potato chips, okay, and all those what they call snacks, snacks. So this is more than 3 dozen brands, 15 brands sell more than 100 million annually, 15 brands, okay, 15 brands. 7 sell over 1 billion. So the planning processes cover 3 to 18 months. Because when you plan forward, you must imagine, you need to plan for your workers. You need to plan for what else? Machines. You need machines to make the products. Correct. And so on. So that's called capacity. So you have a capacity. How many, how much you can produce depend on your capacity. And you must meet your demand. If you do not meet your demand, then customer will run away, basically. Okay, so that's so it is a unique processor, specially designed equipment, high fixed costs, require high volumes and high utilization. Okay, especially when you invest in expensive machineries, high fixed costs, then you need to ensure that you have, you buy a machine for $10 million or whatever, and you only use it 50% of the time. Do you think, you're going to profit from that? Yako?
Yes, Professor.
If you buy a machine, 10 million or whatever, $10 million,
Okay.
and the machine is supposed to do production, or for example, cutting or whatever, but you only use it 50% of the time. So the remaining 50% of time, it is not utilized. So there is called low utilization. So
Yeah,
we are not
yeah,
going to
yes.
get our return on investment. We are not going
Yeah.
to. So we must, plan properly so that it is utilized, high utilization. It doesn't mean 100%.
Yeah, it doesn't mean
It doesn't mean
100%.
100%. It means,
Mm.
if this month I use 80%, next month I use 90%, the other month. So we're talking about, a, constant high utilization of facilities. That's our capacity. Okay, capacity. So it must meet demand. And of course, demand is based on historical sales, from forecast, from innovation, promotion, from sales, so you must match demand to capacity. So you must now the idea of aggregate planning is how to match demand and capacity. How to match. So if you forecast next year there is be a 10% growth, so you need to increase your capacity. But capacity doesn't mean machine only. You can also subcontract. That's why, all the garment manufacturers in Bangladesh, garment industry, they making the branded, or even in China, they produce Nike, Adidas. It's subcontracted out to companies to actually produce it. Okay. So you need to meet total demand to capacity, expansion plan, and the cost involved. So a quarterly aggregate plan goes to 36 plants in 17 regions for Frito-Lay, and each plant develop a 4-week plan. I mean, they have a very, 4-week, mean once month, basically a monthly aggregate. You're not talking about daily schedule. You're talking about aggregate quantity. So in aggregate planning, we are talking about here, aggregate planning. Okay, aggregate planning is actually intermediate range plan. It is not long range plan. Aggregate planning is not talking about long range. Long range is actually new facilities, new factory. And of course, the decision is coming from top executive. So top executive decide on long term. Operation manager is aggregate planning, and also the the mid-term kind of quantities. Okay, but of course, for the short term also operation managers will be involved because you're talking about scheduling. We'll see this in the next chapter, scheduling. Okay, so now we are focusing on this intermediate planning process. So the aggregate plan is coordinated by, it falls under the sales and operations planning. Okay, many companies, they put it under sales and operations planning. So it's not the production actually who actually decide on the aggregate plan. The sales and operations planning unit or section. So they will coordinate demand forecast with functional areas and the supply chain, because you need to understand and you need to coordinate with all the inventories in the supply chain. So you need to tell the suppliers that next year we have this quantity, and it is broken down into monthly. For example, this aggregate plan is like January, February, March, April. So we have this 1,000 unit to meet demand. Okay, so our aggregate plan is 1,000 here. Here 1,500. And here 1,000. Here 800. So this is called aggregate. Okay. For example, the company is making cars. It's going to make 1,000 cars. It doesn't matter what kind of car is it. It doesn't matter whether it's a 2-door, 4-door. It doesn't matter. It is actually aggregate. Total. Okay, total. So this will depend on the demand forecast. And they have to coordinate with all the supply chain. And it is cross-functional because we are talking about purchasing department need to source the materials, and maintenance should make sure that they have the equipment ready. Okay, and so on. Okay, but basically, it must be coordinated throughout the departments. And you are going to determine which plans are feasible, and limitations must also be shown here. For example, we cannot produce 1,000, our capacity is probably 800. So what to do with this 200 demand? So maybe we say we have this outsourcing strategy. So 200 is outsourcing because our capacity is only 800, for example. If it is 800, then the rest is actually outsourced, basically. Okay, or you can have can increase your number of workers if it is allowed. Okay, and it also provide warning when resources do not match expectations. That means if you do not have enough material, what to do? If you don't have enough workers, so this is it's a complex thing. I'm not trying to say it's easy. It's actually very complicated. But the whole thing is actually the output is an aggregate plan. So it is like this. Okay. So it is like this. Can you see this? So if you follow, like where is our forecast? Yeah, here forecast. Remember, we have a demand forecast. So this information is feeded here, feeded. You get this information here. But of course, demand comes from the marketplace. And all these product decisions, process planning about equipment and supply chain. So all this will go information, inventory on hand. So you need to know how much stock we have, because we cannot make more than what is demanded. That is not going to be profit to the company. Okay. So you have your supply chain support, you have your R&D, and you have your workforce. So all these become your elements or your things that you need to decide on. When all this is available, then you come up with your aggregate plan. Okay, aggregate plan. So sales and operation planning develops the aggregate plan for operations. So once your aggregate plan is developed, then only you can develop your schedule, master production schedule, MRP, and so on, and detailed work schedules. Okay, any questions? This is the overall picture of where aggregate planning fit in. Okay, so the whole picture in an organization is like this. It's similar, very much similar. But of course, there is no finance here, Yaakob. Finance doesn't come here. This is actually operations management area, okay, or functions. Okay, all these functions. So it depends now. This is the process planning and capacity decision may fall under the engineering or the process or the plan. Okay, so sales and operations planning and the relationship with other function and the aggregate plan. So when the sales and operations planning try to come up with the aggregate plan, the decisions must be tied to or must be related to strategic planning, the whole strategic planning. For example, the strategic planning is to grow. Growth is very important for the organization. Then it must be integrated together with the aggregate plan. Okay, because this is very simple. Like this is the current product. Maybe you have a new product. So how to fit in the new product into your aggregate plan? Okay. Strategic plan integrated with all areas of the company, overall horizon, planning horizons. And the sales and operations planning is targeted or aimed at coordination and integration, okay, of internal and external sources, right? So you see just now, so you have your internal production, but you have suppliers, and then you have your what do you call human resource. Human resource need to be available. If you don't have enough, then you need to recruit, or you have too many, you can actually fire them. Okay, reduce, increase, reduce. Okay, and of course you need to communicate the plan to those who are actually going to execute it, who are going to actually implement it. Okay. Now, in aggregate planning also, when you come up with your aggregate plan, you need to have a logical overall unit for measuring sales and output. For example, in oil and gas, that's why they say barrels. Barrel is actually the overall unit logical for sales and output. Have you heard of barrel? Oil and gas, this oil field, oil, what do you call, production can produce 500,000 barrels a day, for example.
That is container actually.
Yeah, it's container. Container is also a unit. So container is also a unit. Barrel is also a unit. For example, you produce tanks, gas tanks, number of tanks. So you must have the logical unit that you're going to be similar in output as well as in sales. For example, in car manufacturing, the overall unit is the number of vehicles, number of cars. Okay, completed vehicles. Okay, completed. We don't count the half-ready cars, the painted cars. We don't, because that is not when it's going to be difficult to measure sales. Or even tons. Okay, ton of material, tons. Okay, so that's most important, a logical overall unit for measuring sales and output. And a forecast of demand for intermediate planning, I mentioned just now already. And you also require, so basically what we want is, in order to come up with the model, okay, we need all this. We need a same measurement unit. We need a forecast of demand. I mean, that data is known. If we don't have forecast, we cannot do the aggregate plan. And also we need to know the relevant costs. So what are the costs that we're going to put in, that we're going to consider in order to make the decisions? Okay. So this you need a model that combine forecast and cost, so that your scheduling decisions can be made for the planning period. Basically, you can calculate cost and you can compare, the different strategies. Okay, so you need a model and the strategies. So basically, aggregate planning objective is to be able to meet forecast demand while minimizing costs over the planning period. So we need to balance capacity and demand. Okay, so at the end of the day, it is a cost model. Cost. You need to calculate costs. Okay. So look. This is an example. Okay, this is an example of already developed aggregate plan for this range of products. So this range of products, so the unit of analysis, logical measurement is the one unit of the vehicle. It doesn't matter whether it is a 4-wheel truck or 2-wheel lawnmower, because these different products will be able to be met because they are used for different times. So certain time, when it is low demand, you can produce this, for example. So that's why it is aggregate of everything, all of them. So it's not just one particular product, okay? So this is the aggregate plan. Let's say this is the first quarter. So we are going to come up with this actually. This is what we call as the aggregate plan. But of course, this has already been so-called decided or calculated. So in aggregate plan, we are going to actually combine appropriate resources into the general terms, and it is part of a larger production planning system. And this aggregation will break the plan down into greater detail. So for example, your forecast demand for the year is, how can you get forecast demand? Of course, from data. So you can, for example, you say in Malaysia, the demand of vehicles is around 500,000 units. Cars being sold in Malaysia is around 500,000 units. Okay. Then our company, we have 20% market share, for example. So if 20% market share is around 100,000, correct? So Proton Saga, for example, Proton, we can sell 100,000. So from this 100,000, you're going to disaggregate. You're going to actually break down into, for example, monthly 12-month plan. Okay, so my aggregate plan is a 12-month plan. So this 100,000, how am I going to, meet this 100,000? Am I going to produce it evenly, or I'm going to produce it, based on, or even I can break down into further detail. But this is not this chapter. This master production schedule is in the next chapter. It is after aggregate planning. Okay, after aggregate planning, we can disaggregate, break down further into daily production, for example. So that is not in aggregate planning. So I'm going to just show you. Okay. So what are the strategies that we can use to plan for our medium term year, intermediate. So these are the questions. When you start the aggregate planning, what do you call determination of all the quantity to be produced. Number one, should inventory be used to absorb changes in demand? Should you actually accumulate your, you keep stock when the demand is, low, your capacity is there, you produce more. So should inventory be used to absorb changes in demand? Or should changes be accommodated? That means changes, you change the demand, you meet the demand by varying the size of the workforce. Okay, you will see this after this. There is an example. We'll show you, to meet this demand, we can actually increase our workforce, but there is cost. There is cost of increasing workforce. Should part-timers, overtime, or idle time be used to absorb changes? Changes in demand, okay? Imagine last month is low, now this month is higher, so I'm going to absorb that. So you can use overtime. Or should subcontractors be used? Should you just, let someone else to do it? But of course, there are certain issues that need to be resolved. For example, quality issues, capability. Subcontractor can do it or not. You cannot just say, just give to someone to do it and they don't even know the processes. Okay, so there's already prior arrangement. Or even you can influence demand. That means you try to at low demand period, you try to influence or increase the demand. Normally increase the demand by having prices change or other factors, for example, sales is they have discounts. It's actually to influence demand. Okay, so these are some of the strategies that you can use. You can combine them. You can just select one of them, okay, and see the effect on the cost. So we have this so-called options. Okay, you can actually this is part of the strategy. In terms of capacity options, you can change the inventory levels. So inventory levels, you can increase them in low demand to meet high demand in the future. That means during low demand period, you produce more so that you can meet, the other high demand. Or you can, but of course, this will increase your cost in terms of storage. If you keep extra, for example, you have additional units produced, so you need to keep that before you can be able to meet the demand in the future. Okay, so it will result into this cost. And of course, if you cannot meet the demand, there is shortage, then it may result into lost sales, okay, due to long lead time and poor customer service. Customers, if you buy a product, for example, you wait too long, customer will be dissatisfied. For example, you order a computer, it takes you long time, so you're not going to, you'll be, dissatisfied. So there's a possibility of lost sales. Okay. So capacity option, you can change the inventory levels, or you can vary your work size. So capacity means, you can, increase it by, or you can reduce it by laying off people. So you can vary your workforce, plus or minus, because if you increase, your capacity increase. If you reduce, your capacity will reduce. So you can match production rate to demand. That means you try to have a strategy in which the production rate is what you call similar to what the demand is. If, for example, the demand is 100 a month, then you meet that. If next month is 200, then you meet that. So you have to vary your workforce. Okay, but there are costs involved because you need to train Whenever there is a new worker come in, you need to train them. So cost of hiring, we call it cost of hiring. And also cost for laying off, when you lay off or you reduce your workers. And new workers may have lower productivity, and laying off workers may lower the morale and productivity. So there are implications by, and of course, you don't want to, it's very complex, complicated. If you try to suddenly say, okay, this month I reduce workers, next month you increase. So it's not, it's workable to some industry, but not all industry. In automotive industry, we don't do that. Very difficult to keep on changing the number of workers. But in agriculture, in some industry, they have this, or food industry, food beverages. When the farm agriculture, the peak season is picking, right? You need to pick up the fruits, strawberries or whatever, apples. So the other time is low season. Low season, you don't need more workers. You can, remove the workers. So this is related to that. Okay, capacity options or varying the workforce, or you can vary the production rate through overtime or idle time. So these are all strategies that can be used to influence or to change capacity. Okay. So you can, if you vary your production rate to overtime or idle time, but of course this will result, is this good because it allows constant workforce. You only change the time. You can give overtime, but the workforce doesn't, you don't remove them, you don't lay off. It can be difficult when there is a large increase in demand. If it is that overtime is very limited, you only have 1 hour, 2 hours overtime. Okay, if there is a two-shift system, 8 hours, 2 shift. So if there is a large increase in demand, you will not be able to meet during this overtime because overtime is limited. Okay, and sometimes overtime can be costly and may drive down productivity, because imagine you already work 8 hours, then the worker has to work another 2 hours, especially manual work. Okay, like caku-caku. Remember caku-caku? Caku-caku around, remember? So overtime, you ask her to do overtime. And absorbing idle time may be difficult, because idle time may be used for other things like maintenance and so on. Right, so these are all the theories and, subcontracting. I think you understand what subcontracting is, okay? You actually give to outside parties to do the work, to do the production, okay? It is a temporary measure. It may be costly, and assuring quality and delivery may be difficult because you don't have control on the subcontractors. But it can be achieved if you put in good quality standards to them. But of course, you expose your customers to a possible competitor. Okay, using part-time workers. Now, you can also influence demand, use advertising or promotion to increase demand in low periods. You try to shift demand to slow periods. Okay. But it's not, it may not be sufficient to balance demand and capacity. Okay, it is an option. It is an option, right? But how effective it is not necessarily going to be sure of. Okay. Back ordering during high demand periods. So this require customers to wait for an order. So this is not that not that good, because it can result in lost sales. Okay, because you're back ordering, ask people to wait. Some customers willing to do that, but not all. Or you can produce counter seasonal product, like the lawn mower just now. That is counter seasonal product. So your company, production, must think about not just producing one season product. Okay, you must be able to have a product mix. Winter season product must be produced during the summertime. Summertime product produced during the winter. So that's, or before Christmas, you have to make a product for the Christmas. Then after Christmas, you produce product for the Chinese New Year product. And then after the Chinese New Year, you produce the product for the Ramadan, for the Muslims. So you have a product mix. Okay, if you produce just one, product, then it's going to be because it will actually result into your capacity underutilized. That's going to be one of the risks. So it may lead to products or services outside the company's area of expertise. Of course, this can be resolved. You can invest into new areas of expertise. But anyway, you produce products which are mixed. That's also another option. Okay. So I've shown you just now. This is actually the summary of what I've explained just now. You can read this. Now I'm going to give you an example of. Okay, let's see. Right. So I'm going to develop into a plan. So now I have ideas on how to actually develop an aggregate plan. So you can have a mixed strategy between trying to meet the demand exactly or try to keep inventory and meet the demand for high period, when your production is able to produce more. Okay, so you can play around. You can play around with the numbers that you produce to meet the different periods. And there are many possible strategies, and you need to find an optimal. Optimal means the best to your products mix and also to the organization's strategy. Now, the first strategy that you can, when you want to develop a plan, develop the aggregate plan, is called the chase strategy. So this strategy requires decision on match output to demand forecast for every period. Every period, for example, the period is monthly, so you need to actually match output. That means you produce same as your demand. But by using chase strategy, you need to vary your workforce or vary your production rate. You need to change your workforce levels. That's why it's not good. And this is actually favored by many service organizations. Many service organizations, they can meet this by this chase strategy. But we'll see an example after this, how this chase strategy is used in a production related situation. Now, the next strategy is called level strategy. So the first strategy was chase strategy. Chase means chasing. Chasing means you catch up. But level strategy is uniform. Daily production is constant. Okay, constant. And you use inventory that you have produced more as a buffer for the period which is actually having high demand. The advantage of a level strategy is that it produces a stable production. Okay, because remember, this is uniform, so it is stable. If you produce, for example, 50 units a day, so you're going to produce 50 units a day throughout the planning horizon. Okay, and it will lead to better quality and productivity. That's why automotive industry do this a lot, level strategy. That means you keep the daily production same, but it will differ from month to month. Okay, that's a little bit. It is similar to level strategy. So some combination of capacity option. So you can also have a mixed strategy. Okay, mixed strategy. Mixed means you can have both chase and also level, or you have reduced workers and you can have a certain month you actually have uniform production rate. Production rate is uniform. So the methods now, the methods for aggregate planning, the first is the graphical methods. Okay, graphical method is a popular technique. It's very easy to use, and it is actually a trial and error approach that do not guarantee an optimal solution, and it only require limited computation. Graphical is just graphical. So basically, what this graphical method is, you determine the demand for each period, you determine the capacity for regular time, overtime, and subcontracting. And you find you need to have the cost, labor cost, hiring cost, layoff cost, inventory holding cost. Okay, because at the end of the day, you're going to calculate the total cost for each strategy that we actually decide, and it is you can decide many alternatives actually, many alternatives based on the scenario. Based on the scenario, you can actually determine which kind of combination of strategies that can be used. Okay, so you need to find the labor cost, hiring and layoff cost, and the inventory holding costs. And at the same time, you need to consider or decide what policy that can be used, okay, with regards to the workers and the stock levels. Do you want to keep, what is do you want to keep stocks? If you want to keep stock, what is the level? Okay, how much are you willing to actually maintain the stock level? Okay, so once you have this, so you know your demand, you know your capacity, demand and capacity, and then the cost, what is the policy, then you can develop the alternative plans. So each and every alternative plans, for example, you have option 1, option 2, option 3, so you have 3 options. So you need to calculate the total cost. So total cost of option 1 is, for example, X values, Y. So whichever produce the lowest total cost is considered your optimum. Okay, so that is the thinking. The thinking is you have to think about what are the alternatives, and then you determine you calculate the total cost. Okay. Now, if you have your book, I think it's good to actually read on the. Now, let me see. Okay, assuming that this is the monthly forecast of the product, roof tiles from January until June. So our planning horizon is 6 months. We're not going to bother with 12 months is going to be much more complicated. So we have a 6 months example, very, very simple. So the demand is 900, 700, 800, and so on, with a total of 6,200. And we have different working days for every month. So for production days, January is 22 days, February, it's normal. This is normal in all organization. And also you have holidays and so on. So you have your production days. You can compute, you can calculate your demand per day. Okay, for example, for January, the demand per day is 41. So think like this, demand is what customer wants. I repeat, demand is what customer wants because it is coming from your forecast, right? So 41 is what is demanded by the customer every day. So in January, in February, 39. In March, 38. Of course, it was from the forecast. Okay. And and so on. So you see that in May, it is actually the highest. The highest demand per day is 68. You can actually calculate average demand per day, okay? So the average requirement that you need to produce in order to meet the demand is 50 units per day. So I have two things. One is the average demand according to the specific month value, or it is the overall 50 units per day. So basically this is our graph. Okay, we can actually say this is the production rate per working day. This is the number of days. So this is month basically, month. So let's just say this month, January, February, March, April, May, June. This is the average for January. This is the average for February. You understand? Can you see this? Are you following? This is 50, whatever it is just now. Okay, it is 57, 41, 39, 38, 57, 68, 55. Okay, so this is 68. This is 57. Understand? So this is the forecast demand. And if you see here, in January, can we meet the demand here? This is called not met, because you're supposed to be producing 50 per day, right? So this is unmet, right? Unmet. So how going to? So they have to have wait before in April they can actually be fulfilled. So you can only produce more, sorry, I repeat back. So you can actually produce more here and meet that in the next 3 months. I repeat, for example, if you have this, your demand is only 41. If you produce 50 per day, you have extra here, right? This is extra inventory. So this extra inventory can be fulfilled for the next 3 months, okay? But of course, that's why I said just now, this need to have inventory costs, holding costs. So anyway, so this is a scenario that you probably can have. Now, if I come up with my first plan number 1 is constant workforce. So constant workforce, and I have these are the cost information. $5 per unit per month for inventory holding costs or carrying costs. Subcontracting costs, if I need to subcontract, is $20 per unit. Average pay rate is $10 per hour or $80 per day. Overtime rate is 17 per hour, above 8 hours per day. Labor units produce 1.6 units hours per unit. Cost of hiring increasing, 300 per unit. So whenever I want to increase 1 unit, if I, so that is called the cost of hiring and training. And I need to add that up into my units that I produce. Okay, we'll see the example later on. But this is cost, this cost of increasing daily unit. Decreasing means you throw away your worker and decreasing the quantity, 600 per unit. Okay, so this is basically, but of course, when constant workforce, this is not involved, right? When you have constant workforce, this two is not involved. It is when you have hiring and firing. So for constant workforce, if I say constant workforce, that means I'm going to have a so-called chase strategy, basically, chase strategy. I produce, not chase strategy, it's actually constant workforce, 50 units per day. So total units of inventory carried over from 1 month to the next month is actually 1,850. How you get this? Now, first month, you produce 1,100. Why? Because you have 22 days. You can produce 50 units per day with that workers, but your demand is only 900. So you have plus 200 of inventory, which is going to go to your ending inventory of 200. That means you have stock of 200 because of this additional production. So come February, this is planning. This is planning. It's not actual. This is planning. So 900, you produce 900. Demand is 700. So you still have 200 additional units produced because of the manpowers that you have. So this increased to 400, your inventory. 200 plus 200. Okay, 200 plus 200 equals to 400. And you do for the rest, this is 350. But in April, you can only produce 1,050 and your demand is 1,200. So there is a minus 150. That means you need to use this up. So that's why it becomes 500. 650 minus 150, it becomes 500 because this is the called ending inventory. And same thing in May. So you have 1,500 demand. What you produce only 1,100. There is a minus 400. So that will reduce your inventory, ending inventory to 100. And by June, your production is 1,000 and your demand is 1,100 and you have a backlog of minus 100. You take it from here. Of course, now you do not have any more stock. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Why you have to add this? Why you have to add 1,850? Why, Yaakob? Why you have to add all this ending inventory? 1,850.
Why I have to add?
Yeah, why are we concerned about adding this ending inventory?
Okay.
Nian, why do you think
Depending on the market demand, actually.
No, it is, yeah, of course,
To
you're trying to
fulfill
fulfill the market demand, but
yeah.
Now, at the end of this 6 months, we have actually so-called incur costs. Because if we keep this 200, you are keeping this 200. There is a holding cost. Correct?
Yeah.
So at the end of the month, 200, you keep it for another month. So there is a holding cost of 200 units for one period and 400 units for another period. So this is the total units that you have to keep in the stock to fulfill the demand of the future. Okay. So that's why in the costing, you will have to calculate this 1,850 units carried times $5 per unit, which is your inventory carrying cost, 9,250. And you plus your regular hours. So this is now going into calculating the cost for this first plan. The first plan, which is actually constant workers, will cost you $108,450 by adding up inventory carrying costs plus regular time labor. You don't have any cost on overtime or you don't have any cost on hiring or layoff because you didn't take in new workers. You didn't throw workers. Okay. So this is the first strategy. And I need to finish this before giving you some break because it's already 9 o'clock. Okay. So you are getting where I mean. So the next thing is the second strategy is to use subcontracting. So the second strategy, so we do analysis like this. Okay, the first strategy is same workforce. Number 2, if I don't have enough, I'm going to subcontract. I only produce according to my so-called capacity. Okay. So if I say, so your in-house production is 38 units per day times 124 days. And you will be able to produce 4,700 units. And the rest of it, you need to subcontract it out. So what happens is your total demand minus your capacity produce capacity in-house. You will require 1,480 units to be subcontracted out. So there is a cost for subcontracting, $20. Okay. Your regular workers is you only use 7.6 workers times $80 per day times 184 days. So this will produce your second cost, second strategy total cost. Okay, which is the second strategy is subcontracting. Okay, subcontracting. So subcontracting means you only produce this. I mean, this is just an example. You can increase it if you want. You know, you can say, I'm going to increase this to higher. But this is based on your lowest demand, so which is actually 38. So subcontracting is based on the lowest demand, and the rest, you won't be able to fulfill this. These are all subcontracted. Subcontract. Understand? So the cost of this what they call strategy is 108,000. So this is this, not this one. Where is it gone to? This one. This one. Sorry. Okay, this one. Okay. So subcontracting. Let me just finish the the final strategy so that you can think about it after this. This is a bit difficult. A bit the third strategy for plan 3. Plan 3 is like this. You are going to actually what do you call, meet the demand by hiring and firing. Hiring and firing means it is actually fulfilling the demand, but if there is a reduction, you need to pay off. There's an increase, you have to actually, also pay. You have to need to pay for additional. I'll show you this. Do you know what 41 is just now? I already show you. 41 is the daily production rate. Now, when we move to the next month, okay, it will require, so this is the basic production cost, which is actually the demand times how many hours that you produce times the labor. Okay, this is the normal labor. But when you reduce this to 2, there is a change in 2, right? 2 units. So that is shown here actually, 2. This 2 is actually a layoff because you are reducing the number, quantity. So from 41 reduced to 39, there is a 2 units reduction. So these 2 units is actually the cost for laying off or the cost of decreasing production. Okay, so this is the cost of decreasing production plus this basic what do you call production cost. So you do that for the same. So from 39 to 38, there is a 1 unit layoff or decrease in production. But from 38 to 57, there is an increase of 19 units. 19 times 300 is 5,700. Okay, so this is the extra cost of increasing production. Increasing production for 1 unit, we have to incur a $300 cost. Decreasing, 600 cost. Okay, so that's what is shown here. This is the change from 1 month to another month to another month. Are you following? Are you you can follow, right? 38 for going up to 57 plus 19. 57 going to 68 plus 11. So this plus 11 times 300. Okay, and finally you reduced back, 68 to 55. Okay, so this is the table that you calculate the total cost for the third strategy, which is actually hiring and firing. So this is chase strategy. Chase strategy means you follow exactly the demand. Follow demand. 41 is follow demand. 39 is follow demand. Follow demand. So it will incur a total cost of 117,000. Okay. So this is the for chase strategy. Of course, you don't have any inventory. You don't have any you meet the demand. This is the third strategy just now. This is the chase strategy. Okay. So if you do comparison, this is the most important thing. The most important thing is the comparison of the three plans. So the first plan, which okay, can you tell me what was the first plan? Anyone? This is a bonus quiz question. What is the name of the first plan just now? What did we do in the first plan? What was the strategy in the first plan? Just in your own words. Anyone? What was the first plan?
To determine the demand, actually.
What did we do in the first plan? We didn't follow the demand. Number one, we didn't follow the demand. Did you follow the demand? Number one. Did we follow the demand? We didn't. We actually produced the average.
Less than demand.
Average demand. Constant workforce. That means we just follow the average demand. So we didn't do anything. Okay, average demand. Same workforce, basically same number of workforce. Okay, same number of workforce throughout. Plan number two, demand which we cannot comply to, we actually subcontract. Number two is subcontract. That means we actually produce at a constant 38 per day, and the rest was subcontract. Subcontract, there is cost 20 per unit. Okay, and finally, we actually have this following the demand. Following the demand, you actually produce 900, 700, 800. We produce accordingly, but we have to pay the cost of extra cost of decreasing production, extra cost of increasing production. Okay, so these were the three plans: constant workforce, subcontract, and this is changing workforce. Apparently, for our analysis, for aggregate plan, the best is actually to subcontract. In this scenario, in this case, for this case. Of course, if you do not want to follow your plan 2, it's still okay. You can stick to plan 1, and additional. If the company says, well, 3,000 ringgit dollars is negligible, then they can actually decide on the constant workforce to reduce our headache. Okay, I'll